And we are back with the Philosophy Society. It is August 30th, 2023. Kelly Justice here. We are not in the library again because this is apparently a 2-week lull where it closes at 7 p.m. So we're in this basement place where there's still Wi-Fi. And that's fine. And there's tables, so we're good. So I don't have a whiteboard today, which is kind of a letdown. I'm a very diagrammatic thinker and communicator, which is fun because I can point to stuff that's good. But we can just discuss things. Some things I wanted to go into was earlier, I think it was maybe 3 weeks ago, we were talking about, maybe 4 weeks ago even, goals and the attainment of those goals, and how sometimes it's like the goal itself can, like the pursuit of that goal, can cause like suffering that we didn't know about until we went through and tried to do the thing, right? So it's like somebody wants to be an accountant and then they get the job and then they just hate it. And it really takes away from their well-being. And so on one hand, you have this element of like being determined and following through with accomplishing the goal. And on the other hand, you have this element of being in the present moment and having a sense of what your current state is, what your well-being is, and how your life or pursuing this goal makes you feel, and if it's worth doing, right? So there's an empirical element about going through the process of attaining the goal, because before it was like a plan. It's important for us to, I think, really this discussion goes into value, right? And it's like, what do you value more, the goal itself, or do you value like your well-being and I don't know, your state, right? You in like intrinsically, because the goal is something you're going towards. It's the end, and then there's the means towards that goal. If the pursuit of the goal is compromising yourself, then there will be no self to appreciate the goal when you get it, right? So for example, people that have like very high paying jobs have like this golden handcuff paradox where they make a lot of money, but they don't have the means to even really enjoy or spend the money because they're fixated on their careers so much and they're kind of locked in, right? So I would say fundamentally, like, so what's the solution to this problem, right? It's fundamentally, there's an element of, like Kant would talk about, you always have to like, you can't use yourself as a means to an end. Use yourself as an end in itself. So it's important to make sure that we always value ourselves as an end in itself, and we don't use ourselves as a means. Because, you know, for example, if someone's stressed out and they have some kind of a vice like smoking cigarettes, right, to deal with their stress, and then later on they get lung cancer or have a stroke or heart disease because of the cigarettes, right? Like the very act itself compromised the thing that is the most important thing, you know? And so depending on what our goals are, it's important to keep in mind that if we don't have ourselves to appreciate the attainment of the goal, then the goal is meaningless. And so the most important thing fundamentally kind of has to be our well-being, right? You can have all these plans in life, but if you don't live long enough to even complete the plan, then what was it all for? You know, like what's the purpose of going after the goal or that plan in the first place? If it makes you so stressed out and then, you know, something bad happens because of stress, you know? So it's important to focus on the present moment, but at the same time, be mindful of realistic future goals. And so one thing we can discuss is values. Like, what would the goal be? We can have a meta value or a foundational value, and that would be that our well-being and our health and maybe our social life, like there's certain factors, I would say, of the self. That's one like metaphysical way I kind of talk about it. It's like there's the self and there's different facets of the self, you know? And one of those facets of ourselves is obviously our physical state, our physical being, but also those that we associate with. So our family and our friends. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do with that. And then the people that you associate with in the workplace, right? And then your general public interactions. You know, if you go to a specific club or bar, a bowling alley or something like that, whatever you do for fun, or a park. And so, you know, these different elements of ourself are super important. And that's one thing that we have to figure out. And then, so not only is there the values stuff, it kind of meshes in with the whole meaning of life thing, right? And when I did research a few years ago, there's 3 properties to have meaning in life from positive psychology. There's a paper on the website. One of them is purpose, which is a future-oriented goal, something you're towards. And the other is coherence, so that my story or my identity kind of fits together with this goal, right? And then the last thing is significance, that the goal goes beyond me. So an example would be like a researcher who spends a lot of time looking for the cure to cancer. It's not necessarily something that they may figure out entirely on their own, and the goal itself can go beyond them. So it has significance, right? And maybe they lost somebody to cancer when they were younger. And so that goal can give them a lot of meaning. But if that researcher doesn't value themselves, right, then they would be using themselves as a means to an end. And that would be a violation of the categorical imperative by Kant, which is like an ethical principle. It's important to understand what our values are in themselves. And in a lot of ways, our values are going to be connected to, yeah.
So just to make sure I'm following, so one of the things you mentioned was significance or values, and also coherence. One of so was there other things as well? Significance, coherence,
Purpose.
And what would be is there a difference?
No, not purpose.
It was purpose. It was purpose.
Was it purpose? Okay.
Purpose, coherence, and significance.
Thank you, Ellie. Yeah. Yeah, a future-oriented goal, right? And then that goal is coherent with your identity or your narrative. And so a lot of times, like when we look at PTSD, people will have like an experience that they can't incorporate into their narrative, right? And so it's very difficult for them to move on from it, even from a fundamental, like their brain itself can't integrate those memories. And so they get flashbacks. It's not a pleasant experience. So coherence is finding a way to create a story that we would want to say is empowering. You don't want to go down the path of being depressed, right? And then the goal itself can't be trivial. It can't just be like, and I will exit the building in 25 minutes. Like, that's a goal, right? But it's like, it's not gonna, like, everybody's gonna do that, right? Like for me, the goal almost has to be like this. When it comes to significance, it's almost unattainable. Not impossible, but
it has to be a goal that's beyond you as a person.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what they mean by significant. Yes.
Yeah.
And so those 3 properties, that's how we would create meaning in life. And then values would be like a different category. It would be a different thing because there's different kinds of values. Like, for example, I ate a burrito today. Today, I valued that burrito. And I bought one of my friends a vegan sweet potato meal thingy that they serve at that place. And I brought it to her for lunch because I want to be nice. And so that's one kind of value, like your food choices in general or specifically. And then you can have a value for like your style of clothing, you have a value for things you like to do on the weekend. You know, and then there's like values that motivate, like almost principles in some ways. But I would say the value is almost like it's a smaller unit of meaning than a principle. A principle is almost a statement that guides us towards action that is based on a value, right? So it's important so Nietzsche has this principle called revaluation of values, to look at the hierarchy and the structure of our values and ask ourselves, is the priority that I'm placing on this specific value at, like, just kind of evaluate it. Is it good? Is it bad? Should it be number one? Should it not be number one? And he was kind of applying this to like Christianity and the value for God, and said that, you know, God is dead. Humans and evolution and is actually the predominant value. You know what I mean? We have to value ourselves in some ways. And then he has like the Ubermensch and the will to power. So we can derive some utility from that concept, right? And in our self-reflective philosophical move, when we reflect on ourselves, you say, well, why did I do that? You know, say, oh, because I wanted this. That was a value I had. You know, and then, well, what were the consequences of this thing? Right? Was I mindful? Like, why was I acting in such a way? And when we go through this process of reflection and then understanding why we do things, we can reorient ourselves based on modifying that hierarchy of values. And then when we take this value awareness and we plug it into the meaning concept, right? Which goes back to the first discussion about goals. Yep.
So this reevaluation of values, does it fit into the coherence, the concept of coherence, finding coherence?
Mm-hmm. And not only that, but then like when we talk about the goals or your purpose, you know, why am I doing something? What is my motivation behind a task or to just live in general? You know what I mean? So that's like kind of what we're talking about, meaning in life. You want to make sure that the values you have are coherent. Like, for example, like
What was his question?
the question was, does the revaluation of values fit in with coherence when it comes to meaning in life? And yeah, for sure, right? Because sometimes people will have a value that is contradictory and goes against their well-being.
But it's hard for people to know their values too, no?
Yeah, for sure. And that's part of the facilitation of like the philosophy society, is that we are a group of people that are practicing certain skills. And one of those skills would be, if you are open to it, you can help each other understand each other's values, you know?
It's still going to be hard to figure.
Sure, but we're going to try. I'm not going to try, you know? I think part of it would be like maybe a denial thing or like a lack of awareness. And so, you know, like an example would be like, I have a person I'm trying to help out right now. They're staying with me and they are addicted to cigarettes, like chain smoker addicted.
Okay.
And they're in they're almost 40 now. And I care about this person. And I say, like, do you at least acknowledge that this habit is like most likely going to give you cancer? Just like, let's just start off with that you're not breathing oxygen. Like, you know, like it's not even marijuana. Like cigarettes, benzene is a chemical that is put in tobacco and it causes cancer. So the first part would just be the acknowledgement, because there's this behavior, there's this huge value for cigarettes, and this person lost their job recently and is on EI, and because of the amount of cigarettes that they smoke, they really can't afford it, right? It's not good for them. And so when you reflect on this person's well-being, you'd like to think that they value themselves. Like, for example, like eating, having money for food. And very often they don't have money for food. But then when you look at the pattern of their behavior, they will spend like $15 on a pack of smokes and then smoke that pack within 3 days for sure. Like for sure within 3 days. And that's a lot of money, especially when your income is super low, right? And so we have the addictive properties. That's one thing. But I almost want to say that there's an exercise of willpower that needs to be put in place here. So Ali, I'm just responding to your point really and saying this would be difficult to know our values. And you're correct. And this as an example of someone that doesn't have money for the thing they value. The thing they value is killing them. And it literally is taking money off of the table for their food.
They don't care though, do they?
Value, right? So that's why I said fundamentally the value for ourselves and our well-being kind of has to be number one.
But it's not.
So what do we do?
We change the way we think about it. We can't be thinking like, if you're trying to help someone quit smoking, it doesn't have to be the uphill battle of climbing the willpower thing. It's just not going to work out. You'll see. It has to be the opposite way. It has to be for them to think about that it's for them to realize it's a horrible thing and it doesn't really help them with anything. So if that person is saying that they enjoy smoking because they feel less stressful after a cigarette, you have to prove to them that it's not really what you think it is. You have to prove to them it's not really helping them reduce reduce stress. There's another person that smokes to enjoy himself. Then you have to prove to him that it's not really enjoyable to you. So it's not an uphill battle, but a downhill battle. That's what works. Like an uphill battle against cigarettes can never work. Trust me on that.
Yeah.
I was a smoker, and the way I quit was I was a smoker. I was smoking like 60 a day or something, and trying to think about it as an uphill battle was pretty much impossible to do. And the only way I figured it out was that it's a downhill battle if you are trying to stop smoking. So you just stop at the top. So it's like a different approach. It's like a completely opposite approach. You don't need willpower. You don't need any willpower to do it. If you make the other person realize that, then it's easier.
So just to clarify, so you're saying that if you can change your perspective on the meaning of smoking cigarettes,
Yeah.
that makes it a downhill battle. It makes it easier to let go of it.
Yeah, because it's not an uphill battle then. It's like, so if a smoker, let's put it like this. If a smoker is trying to stop in the way that it's an uphill battle, every day is gonna feel worse for them. And on the other side, if there's a person that's looking to stop smoking, looking at the downward pattern of it, every day is gonna be feeling more enjoyable and more enjoyable as they quit it.
That's cool. I like that. That's a nice success story, right? So when we say uphill battle, the way that I would interpret that psychologically would be that you are not avoiding a reward. You're interpreting the act of smoking in some ways as like a punishment. And so you're trying to say, no,
there you go.
That's the acceptance of that it's not good for you.
Yeah, of course it
Right?
is.
Like that's like the first step is just to come to the position that this is something that is not.
You can make the other person realize that. It's pretty easy to make the other person realize that because it's actually bad.
Yeah, well, for sure. A lot of people, I think what they do is they compartmentalize. Like there'll be the act itself, and then they'll put all of the scientific information like over here somewhere, you know? And it's just like out of sight, out of mind. Like the horse has the blinders on, and they'll just be in their body. Like will be mindful of how it feels and how their stress goes down in the as an immediate reward. And so, but what you're
It's an illusion.
Yeah, for sure. Like what you're saying about the interpretation part is super important. And I think that is like a guiding principle when someone's going through the quitting process. So this would be a revaluation of values, right? So if we have our smoker friend or if you're a smoker yourself and you say, hey, like, the real thing would be like, I don't have that much money, right? I can't afford this. So, and when you know that you've lost your job and you have like, let's say 8 months of EI.
It doesn't matter. The guy would fucking beg, you know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, well, that's what's happened. And
it doesn't matter.
But it's just being able to, like, from the best thing would be able to look at our lives and say, is this pattern of behavior conducive to my well-being, to the ultimate value, which is like health or like your best self or the good life, whatever you want to call it. And some people could say a good life would be like being in a room filled with cigarettes that are fresh and they never go stale, and I could just sit here and smoke them all day. Like maybe that's a weird value of what they think the good life is, but fundamentally because of the human condition, James,
I don't want to interrupt. I'll let you finish.
it kills us, so it's like just you smoke yourself to death, really, like like that's. Go ahead.
Is there any notion in philosophical literature that portrays necessary mistakes that a man or woman or whatever has to make that will be part of their enlightenment? So perhaps this is a phase in your friend's life where he has to make these mistakes, because if he doesn't do them now and suffer the consequences of them, he will not have that kind of enlightenment later on that could perhaps aid him in becoming his best self. I don't know.
Yeah. Hegel has this really good quote about the being or the Geist in its attainment of itself or its becoming. It like wants to skip stages of its growth to accelerate it, but all those stages are necessary to get to that point. And I'm just paraphrasing. It's the problem with that, like when we look at like a deterministic view, like things are just meant to be this way or meant to happen, you can kind of rationalize and justify any circumstance with that and just avoid all responsibility and just say, I was just meant to be a smoker and then never quit. If like depending on how we conceptualize that, when we say it's meant to be this way or if it's necessary, like I think that for sure, when we use the word necessary, there are some stages of growth or thresholds that we have to overcome in learning something. Like if you're learning to skate, being able to have balance, like balance on skates is important, and then incorporating momentum with that, if the goal is to play hockey or whatever,
So were you saying that it would be a problem to say that his behavior is somewhat predefined? That would be problematic. I mean, I'm trying to kind of go at it from a different angle. What if it's just kind of a psychological thing that humans are prone to doing during stressful periods in their lives? So, for example, a very kind of reductive example is somebody that just goes through a breakup.
Mhm.
And they are at that moment unable to process everything that's happened. So they go out and they binge drink, they have, they engage in substances, and then they engage in promiscuous activities. But it's kind of like the body somewhat needs to do that in order to get to the next stage of kind of healing. I don't know if that makes sense.
I think that different people have, like, you can use the word vice, but different predispositions, and your early childhood upbringing and the influences that you've had during your development can kind of gear you towards certain things. So like, for example, some person might love cheesecake and then they stress eat, right? And so they have a predisposition towards eating cheesecake when they're stressed out. And then they can have weight issues after that. Or if they eat too much sugars, they can have diabetic issues. So this is part of the self-awareness thing.
No, but when you're trying to quit something, you have to go through it first, though. That's what that person is saying, I think.
Okay.
That part of the learning is going through it. That's why there's a very nice quote that goes like, stay foolish. A fool that persists in his folly becomes wise. That means that you just have to like persist in the wrongdoing that you're doing, so that when you get to the end of it, you just realize that it's useless. You know?
James is going to respond to
Yeah,
what
and
you're saying.
if I could just kind of finish off that point that he's making,
Ali.
Ali, there's a French writer from the early 1900s named Marcel Proust, who's known for writing this big series of novels called In Search of Lost Time. And in it, he is quoted, and this I'm just saying to the effect of, only when one has reached the most extreme point of suffering, only at that point is one freed from that suffering. So I wonder if there's a connection.
That's cool.
to-
Yeah, that's very much what I said in some better words. I'm kind of bad with words, but yeah,
You're doing great. You're great.
I was right. Because I think the way it works is like when you get to the end of it, you just realize it because you've seen all of it. And if you're not seeing all of it, you're like at the beginning or like the middle stage of it, you're just speculating how it's going to look like at the end, which might be right and might not be too. Like most probably it's not going to be right because it's hard. But when you're at the end of it and you have the audacity to think about it, then you're good.
Somewhat like seasons, there is a last winter day, there's darkest day. After that, it cannot go darker.
Mhm. For sure. I think like going on Ali's point about the fool, I understand that point, but like there's also the ignorance is bliss idea. And, you know, to a certain extent, people can embrace like the you only live once lifestyle and get into a hedonistic way of being. And that's not really conducive with the good life.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. I mean, what you're saying is very accurate too, but I mean, it depends. Like, not every person can give up on the wrong that they're doing. Like, if you look at it, when you go towards the extreme of it, only a few amount of people would be able to realize it. A lot of people would just drown in it.
Yeah.
You know, what you're saying is completely right. For like, if you're looking at the most of the people that don't want to like think about it, that don't want to be better, they would just give up on it because they've got so much and they just want to keep going. Because I feel like there's no end to that as well.
So that's where I think that this is part of the reason why we have the group, right? Is because as a human independently, you only have so much power, let's say. But together, we can influence each other and support each other. And that has a big effect, you know? And so like when things get difficult, when you have the support of your social group, it makes it a lot easier. And we see that with like group therapy. And at the end of May was the first Google Meets recording. It's on YouTube, and I did a research paper on overcoming mental illness from a social perspective. And the case study was therapeutic communities. And I used 3 like very concrete examples, one from substance abuse, another one for personality disorders, and another one for psychosis. And in every single case, those are completely different categories of mental illness. There was huge improvements with the therapeutic community context. And so modeling, you know, a philosophically oriented group, like when you say philosophy society, it's just really just society, but just people value the practice of being philosophical. And so I've spent a lot of time talking about what it means to be philosophical, because we have to know what we're doing. It's like if no one's ever taught you how to bowl and you're join a bowling league, you know, you could be very confused. Or if you go to a soccer game with a hockey stick, it's like, I don't know what's going on here, right? So part of the practice is kind of just identifying what does it mean to be philosophical in contrast to just being a student of philosophy, someone that reads what other people have said. And then how do we do that as a group? And what does that mean? So one of the things would be like, we reduce our bias, or in this context, we provide social support, right? Because there's greater well-being and higher possibility of achieving a good life for each person and the group entirely if we do provide those things. So then it just seems necessary to just do it. It's like, well, you might as well. So self-reflection is one of the fundamental properties. So making mistakes, and it's not that, I don't think just being foolish as a goal is necessarily good.
Yeah, of course not.
But when I do make a mistake, having the humility and acceptance to know that it was me that did it. And that doesn't take away from the value of myself or my self-esteem.
I think that's what differentiates between the people that just drown in that foolishness and the people that actually convert. To having that humility to think about that was actually a mistake.
Yeah, and it's honestly a big deal. Like, it's one of the counters to narcissistic personality disorder.
Yeah.
Right? It's accepting that you fucked up, and if I fuck up, it's like, okay, I can accept that. Other people can inform me. And part of it is that maybe we're not in the mood to accept criticism from somebody else, right? So there could be a process on how to take that information in, and then there may be moments when I'm reflecting on myself that I'm more likely to be aware of the things that I've done, right? And so, like, if I'm super tired and I'm stressed out or I'm currently upset, that might not be the time to be like, Achilles, by the way, you didn't pay the gas bill or something like that, or you were disrespectful yesterday or whatever it is, right? But I think when you're in a neutral state of mind and then someone proposes to you, hey, can I please communicate with you about something? There's something I wanted to talk with you about. Are you in a good state? And the person, and then yeah. And then there's a habit there. There's like a practice.
There's no neutral state of mind though.
Okay, well, I mean, like, you're not angry, you're not hungry, you're not like tired.
You probably accept anything you say.
Well, but some people don't. Like this one individual, the smoker person, like, for example, I said, can you please lock the garage when you're not in the garage? Because I have thousands of dollars of my stuff in there. And some of the people that have lived with me have stolen shit. And I just like to keep it locked to make sure if they ever come back to steal shit, at least the fucking doors are locked, And then they go, yeah, okay. And then so the other day, they're like, well, what's the problem, Achilles? What have I done that's so wrong? And I'm like, well, for example, you've been here for 3 months and you haven't locked the garage like once. And I gave you a key. I think you lost one key. And it makes me uncomfortable. And so you're just blatantly disrespecting what we've talked about and the agreement that you made. And so that was my statement, right? You have not done X. And then that person's response was, but you have a $30,000 car in the driveway. You're not scared about that getting stolen. And I'm like, okay,
I don't blame them.
Two completely different things to talk about right now, right? Like, we can talk about that, but you need to respond to this thing actually, because that's what you're responsible for. And so part of like deflecting criticism, is there's different ways people can do it. And so what's going on is that the person just gets upset and they're not thinking with their prefrontal cortex. They just go with their emotions to a place of safety where they feel comfortable and safe. And then that way they're not threatened.
But you're always going with your emotions though. I mean, look at you right now. You're going with your emotions right now.
Yeah. But my emotions aren't compromising what I'm saying. They're going together. It's when my emotions are going this way, and then what we're talking about is going that way.
That can never happen.
Well, in this case, I told the person, you didn't do X, right?
Yeah, his emotions were going on the other side that he was saying about.
Yeah, so instead of that person, so what you would really want to say is, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, you're right.
If his emotions were going the other way, the way you wanted them to, but they weren't. So his emotions were going exactly the same way that he was talking about. So you're kind of neglected there for him.
Well, okay.
To get the door done for garage, I'm pretty sure, like, no matter how horrible you are as a person, it wouldn't just take like fucking 5 minutes to get the garage door done. So it wouldn't really matter for you, even if you are a smoker or whatever you are. But if your emotions are going the other way, you're just going the other way, and you want his action to be the other way.
Yeah.
Than emotions. That's contradictory for him. So he's not
Yes.
abiding with that.
So what we have to do is we have to slow down the reasoning and we have to respond to that emotional state first.
Yeah, but that's an uphill battle.
If you have an alternative approach to deal with the situation, I'm all ears. But
That's an uphill battle. Like how would you figure with the person out that you have to go, like, you have to climb like fucking Everest when you're not even equipped for that? He's not gonna do it. There's no way he can do it.
well, what I did is I had to take space because, like you're saying, uphill battle. You're right, and I wasn't in the state of mind I didn't have the cognitive energy at that moment. So I went and did another activity, and then at 9 p.m. I came back and I said, okay, now I'm ready for this. Right?
Okay, what did you say?
I know what to expect now, and so I said, from your perspective, I can understand how it doesn't make sense to do this. However, you don't have all the information. You don't know the history of me managing this property. I've had 2 different individuals either steal stuff or attempt to steal stuff, right? And when you're making this judgment, it becomes ignorant because you're making a judgment without information. So if I say something that doesn't make sense to you, instead of making an agreement with me and then not following through with the agreement, which then turns you into a liar because you agreed to something and you don't do what you're saying, and then you're unreliable, that's at least what other people will see, and that's not good for you. It's not good for your character to present yourself in such a way, right? If you disagree or you don't understand, you can always take a time out and say, let me think about that. Let's talk about it later so I have time to process it. Or your request doesn't make sense. Like, for example, here's something that doesn't make sense. Every time you come into the house, you have to do 10 jumping jacks or you're not allowed in the house. What the fuck are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. I don't ask things like that. I just say lock the
That's
door.
exactly what you're doing with him, though.
Well, when I explained it to him and I went through it and I
What
said,
do you say?
the reason is because there has been theft in the past and there may be people motivated to steal again. He's like, oh, I didn't understand that. And I'm like, yeah. So if you don't understand, you can always just ask me. And that's
And then
fundamentally.
what do you say after that?
So today, he's like, I locked the door every time I left the garage. I was like, all right, there we go. And I haven't smoked on the property for 4 days. Okay, there you go. No more
Really?
cigarette butts. I don't have to smell it anymore. Because some people process information at a lower pace, right?
So
And-
the problem with this is that the more you do it, the worse it gets. So the problem is he hasn't smoked for the last 4 days on the property, and after a month he's just gonna start lying about it because it's an uphill battle, which is kind of hard to fight, which can never be fought. It's an illogical way to think about it. I think he's just gonna figure out ways to do it. He's just gonna figure out ways for you to be comfortable that, okay, he's just gonna lie to you that, yeah, I got the garage door done at night, while he's gonna do it in the morning while you're sleeping, and he's gonna go out for a cigarette. And so, like,
it's definitely a possibility. And, like take care, guys. Thanks for coming. Thank you.
Revaluation of values.
Very good.
where are you though?
I'm at the university near
Oh,
the pub that we were at before.
I've never been there.
So if you want to come to
I
next
should
week's,
probably come soon.
yeah, you'd like these guys, man. You guys would enjoy it. The discussion will be, because then they can see you and you'll be able to interact, right?
Oh yeah, I love that other person that kept talking.
Yeah. Well, come next week. So usually what we do is we go to the library, but it's been closed the last 2 weeks. So I came into the basement. Yeah, at Ryerson. I came to the basement, and this is just like the best angle where there's no crazy light in the background.
Oh, I love the background.
Yeah. So, okay. Yes, you can be skeptical, and there is that possibility. But what we can only work with the information we know. We kind of have to be empirical, and we have to use an evidence-based approach with these kinds of, I don't know, interventions, let's call them. And fundamentally, the person has to care. Like if they don't, they have to care about the relationship. And so when I say things like, when you make an agreement and you go against the agreement, that's disrespectful to me and to yourself. I feel disrespected when you say something and you don't do what you're going to do or what you say. And that matters to them because I've done a lot for this person. Like I've lent them like thousands of dollars and given them a place to live, bought them clothing and food. Like I've done a lot. I've done a lot. And so just because I'm like, you need it, I feel bad not giving it to you. And just like, if I have like food and you're starving, like what kind of a person am I if it's in my hands and you're
okay, let me ask you one thing. Do that person, how long have he or she been smoking for?
He has been smoking for maybe 20 years at least.
Okay. And does he feel bad about it? Like on his own? Like don't bring like yourself in the picture.
No, I don't think so.
So like whenever the person smokes, what do they think that it gives them?
That's part of the acceptance problem. Like for at least 6 weeks, I observed their behavior. Like when you say something, people can be like happy or they can be like upset, right? I observed like they were not phased. It did not upset them that they were currently addicted to this substance. It was like a good thing. Like it's like this romanticized version of smoking cigarettes. Like you're cool. You're like, yeah. Like it's like they still kind of have that attitude.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, like sure.
Well, why would they come to listen to you then?
Well, because what I say makes sense. That's the first thing. Is that
Yeah, I mean that's of course that's true. But like why would that make them listen to you? Like that means that actually like inside of them they tend to think about like it's not really right what I'm doing.
exactly. And so what we need to do
Is that true?
Part of them understands that, but it's really the other part doesn't want to let this part happen.
Yeah, no, yeah, forget the other part. But part of them understands it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Especially when I say something like, what happens if you like get married and you have like a 7-year-old kid and then you get cancer? Like how's that going to feel? You know, because now is when you need to quit, not then. And it might already be too late because you're almost 40. So that's supposed to expedite it. Like it's, you know, you need to quit immediately, right? So this is an ongoing, like we could say case study, but there has been progress. Like there hasn't, one thing is like the cigarettes on the ground, right? Cigarette butts all over the property.
I have something to propose.
Sure.
I have an exercise for you to commit to with that person for 30 days. And I can assure that he's going to quit after that.
Okay, tell me.
If he doesn't, I pay you $5,000.
You don't have to pay me any money.
Okay, cool. He's going to do it.
Okay.
So it might sound like hysterical or like pretty much stupid, but it's kind of true. That's exactly how I stopped smoking, and exactly how my 3 more friends stopped smoking. So it has 100% rate
Okay.
to it. But only if he can understand what you mean about it. So what you have to do, you have to take aside 1 or 1.5 hours with him every day for the next 30 days to read him the material that I'm going to send you.
Okay.
And you have to make sure he understands what you're reading to him.
Okay.
And he's done.
What is the material?
Yeah, that we can talk about later.
All right.
I have
Interesting.
that material because that's the material that actually I was smoking 60 a day for a long period of time. My friend was smoking like 80 a day. 80 a day is like crazy. Like you can't even do it even if you're a smoker.
Yeah.
You would do like maybe like 40 max. Like after 40 you're just done, even if you're a smoker,
Mhm.
even if you're a chain smoker.
Yeah.
And the person that wrote this material was smoking 100 a day, and he went to from 100 to 0 at once.
Is it
So
Alan Carr's book?
a little bit of it, yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That's
No,
good.
he works. He a little bit of his material works,
Mhm.
and I have some more material as well that I used for myself,
Thank you.
for my other friend, and it works only if the other person is able to understand it, comprehend it, and think about it every day. So if you can commit that kind of material with that person for 30 days, it's 100% done. There's no way it can't be done. Like there's no way. Because what it does is, so the thing with that is that it portrays it as a downhill battle, not an
Yeah.
uphill.
It helps you
First of
reframe
all,
it. Okay. That's cool, man. I like that. Yeah.
that's one part of it. The other part of it is that it tries to target the desire for you to smoke.
Mhm.
So it talks about the real reasons you desire to smoke, and it actually helps you identify that reason, which is only one. And then it tries to take that out of you slowly but surely. And you're a pretty articulated person yourself. So if you are trying to help that person, alongside reading that resource, it's going to be like easy.
That's cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you got me, dude.
All right, Ali. Well, I think we're going to close it for now for today.
All right, peace.
And so next week, Wednesday at the SLC building. Do you know where that is?
I know, but I can speak to you about it.
Yeah. Message me if you need to. And then we're there for 8, and then we go up to one of the rooms, and usually I write stuff on the board. It's better in that space because I have a whiteboard to work with. Here, they closed the library early this last 2 weeks, so I just came downstairs.
Is everybody gone?
Yeah, 2 of the guys they left already.
Cool. That's all right. No, for sure. I'll see you then.
All right, brother. Thanks for coming.
See ya.
Take care.